Lots of people have lots of different ways to do it. Um, and I think there are probably more exceptions to the rule than there are actual like hard and fast rules. So pretty much know that everything I say to you today is going to be wrong in some context. Um, and that's not going to stop us from just like laying groundwork. And exceptions always pop up. It's just part of our job to manage them as they go along. Um, so I assume everybody's here from the VFX Talk Discord, so I don't need to plug that. But hello, this is Tim on that Discord. Hello, this is tim.com is my website. If you feel like you need to see any other stuff that I have done. The folks at Ashen VFX don't realize, but they contributed the footage that I'm going to be using for this. So I super appreciate the fact that they released the like learning materials that are there for free on their website. If you don't know about them, go look at their website. There's a whole package of material that you can just grab and bash on. And that is super awesome. So when we're doing a blue screen or a green screen key, we just say, oh, I'm doing a key for this. But it's actually two separate operations. We need to be able to separate the foreground from the background. That's one operation. And we need to get rid of the background, whatever the background color is, that spills into the foreground so that it's not causing problems. So those are two operations. And in the OG way, we solve these separately. There are some approaches where they all happen at the same time. I got raised up by a bunch of hardcore comp soups who, if they would detect me trying to use those sort of tricks, they would smack my hands. And so I'm kind of a traditionalist. I like them separate because I have control over each one. So basically, we have our footage. You know, one of the things that we want is to have a mat. This is not a particularly great mat, but this mat will let us kind of separate the foreground and the background. Then we have our despilled plate that doesn't have any more green in it or has an appropriate level of green in it. Questions so far? Anybody?
Nope, you're good.
Cool. So I set up the script when I still had a few days left on my my Nuke demo from the Foundry, and now I don't, so I'm a non-commercial. And my Primet and Ultimat are all errored out, so sorry about that. But if we did have a license for them, we would see that there are a whole bunch of like, you know, foreground, background inputs for those. And it's a valid question, like, why do those exist if all we want from a keyer is to make a mat? This is the part where I say again that everybody has their own special approach. These tools, a lot of them were built for doing what I call a TV style key, where, you know, that came from you know, part of Ultimat's background is doing the like weatherman green screen for you know, the daily news. And so they needed a background input to their keyer, and they needed to be able to do some things with the background relative to the foreground and all that kind of stuff. And I think I'm totally talking about stuff that I haven't done the research on, but my assumption is that those are kind of left over from that application that don't really apply to what we're doing in film. You will, if you spend any time in the industry, you probably will have seen this. If you are coming into the industry, you will definitely see that like everybody has their own way of doing this. Some people do use key or despill tools. Some people don't. It's kind of like almost a religious debate. Uh, you can get involved in it at your own kind of risk. Um, where I net out is any technique that you can take from starting and final it without having to rip it out and completely replace it is good by me. Um, Also, as a person who has picked up a fair amount of scripts to final them, um, simpler, more understandable is always better, um, because I have picked up plenty of complicated systems um, that I didn't understand and didn't have the time to understand because it had to be done like now. And so the way you solve that is you rip that thing out and throw it away, and then you start over again. Um, and so this is just my own kind of personal plea for simpler, or even if it's complex, maybe give us a couple of labels on things so that we know what parts do what and where to look to adjust things. All right. So here's the kind of core of the like the film keying approach. We have our plate up here. We come down through. Admit somebody else. Cool. So we come down from our plate and we split off basically. And here is where we solve our two separate problems. I've flopped them left to right now. This is the way I always think about it. We come down through some sort of despilling. It could be AE despill. Way back in the day, it used to be like, hue correct. Anything that finals is a good approach. Over here, we have a keyer. That alpha then comes back into the main pipe. We pre-multiply by it, and then we put it over our footage. Like so. Kind of dark, sorry. So this is kind of like the block diagram of like where we start. But we never end up here. Where we end up is usually, well, this is not where we end up, but this is a kind of way station on the way to final. There are compositors who are really good at keying and really fast. And then there's all the rest of us. I will be honest, keying is, I tell people that keying is my worst subject in compositing. I do it, I final lots of shots. I never feel like I know what I'm doing until it's done. Dan's asking about pre-multiplication.
No, I asked the community if everyone understood the process of
Cool.
multiplication.
Okay.
Just sort of inviting people to ask questions if you cover a topic, because we're all at different levels and with different backgrounds.
Yes, please. And thank you for the reminder. Please feel free to interrupt me at any point. Just to clarify something that I said, or to like ask about possible variations. Totally here for all of it for the next 45 minutes. So if you do get kind of freaked out by keying, this is normal. Lots of us successfully work in the industry completely freaked out by keying. It's okay. It doesn't mean you're a terrible compositor. So this is kind of largish. Here's an example kind of like of that setup, but with more things happening to deal with kind of like this one area needs a little adjustment here. The D-spill doesn't work over here, but it does over here. Like we kind of end up splitting things together. And so we still have, like if we look down here, we still have the pipe that contains the D-spill and the pipe that contains the alpha. But you can see the graphs feeding these. And this is just like, this is by no means a production shot. This is just me kind of showing you like some possibilities. They get even bigger from here if they need to. So what am I doing here? Let's look at the D-spill pipe. So here's my, this frame hold is just so I don't look at all the frames in this sequence. We're just going to deal with frame 213. Here's my same D-spill from the setup, but it turns out that if we look at the D-spill, I'm going to turn off this key mix. So we're just looking at the main D-spill, and then, oh, fun. Oh, non-commercial strikes again. So if anybody can't see the difference, holler out, and I will make it even more obvious. So our D-spill, forgot to talk about something really important. The reason why we split D-spill and the alpha creation is so that those two things aren't kind of interrelated. But it creates a question of like, when we see a problem like this edge, is my problem, is it located in the D-spill pipe? Like, am I creating an edge with my D-spill? Or is it located in my alpha creation pipe? Is my keyer or some process that I'm doing creating that edge? That's like question one when you see an artifact like that. And you need to figure it out. How do you figure it out? Let's go up here. Here's our plate. Here's the trick that I do. I can kind of see, here's green screen, here's foreground, and then there's this like ambiguous area that's kind of a mix of forescreen and background. I'll take my little color selection tool. Actually, let me do it here. And that kind of is going to be a marker for me. Lots of people have different ways of doing this. This is just mine. This is kind of going to be a marker for me of, I expect my alpha to be 1 here and to be 0 here. And so I can kind of go and I can look at the final, and that looks reasonably well matched to where things should be. I can also look at my alpha here, and I'll switch to alpha mode. Oh, awesome. I'm not used to this like little viewer thing. Let's destroy everything. Yes. Awesome. I seem to have lost my keyboard shortcuts. Cool.
Are you able to just flip through any other channels? You weren't able to flip to like red or anything?
Oh, there we go. Okay, it's happening. It's just
Yeah, maybe somewhere where you're viewing.
no, it's totally user error. So one of the things that I do is I shuffle the alpha into red, green, and blue, as well as in the alpha, so I don't have to hit the A key to make sure I'm like
Viewing
when I'm
it.
going through a script.
Yeah.
And so in this case, because I have the sRGB LUT set for the viewer, it's totally identical. I'm used to working with a different LUT for the RGB channels, which is the way it happens mostly in production. So
Right.
sorry about that. So here we can see that I have a little bit of a kind of, you know, I would expect to be 1 in these pixels under here. But this outer edge seems to be in the right place. So I'm pretty good there. Let's have a look at our D-spill. Definitely have this edge happening here in the D-spill. This footage is like ProRes, I think. It's been kind of like lightly compressed. There's a little sharpening in the green and blue channels. So it's not ideal for making a key, but it's what I have. So in order to avoid this, and because it looked pretty good for bright backgrounds, but it's dark backgrounds that are showing that edge, I made a luminance key to separate bright background from dark background. And then I use this I'm using this key mix to mix in a different D-spill. I'm using, instead of AP D-spill, I'm using D-spill madness for this one, and then a little bit of correction to get a completely different, yet still flawed D-spill. So here's my D-spill for the darks. Here's my D-spill for the brights. I put them together, and we get this, which looks clean over our background. Question so far? So using multiple D-spills that are tweaked to work well over the places that we need them to. It could be that the screen is unevenly lit and changes color from left to right side of the frame. Like that happens sometimes. Sometimes you need a separate D-spill for the other side. Sometimes it's just like one object, somebody's hair or something like that will need a separate D-spill. Super common to just like, don't mess around with your main one that's working mostly, like it's doing a reasonably good job, it just fails in certain areas. So then make a second one that's set up to work in the areas where the other one failed, and then split it in with a key mix. You can also use a Roto to merge those if it's like kind of related more toward the camera. If you've got vignetting or something like that, just a static Roto will be your perfect mask for the key mix. All right, let's look at what's going on over here. So there's a couple of different things happening. I'm using the IBK for my kind of main key. And that one, usually, there's this IBK color node that you use with it to kind of regenerate a clean plate. In this case, I discovered that if I go to the very front of the clip and the very end of the clip, I can pretty much create a clean plate from just the footage that I have. So I don't need to go for any of the like keying and erosion that happens in an IBK. And so when I can use a dirty trick like this, I totally will. And here's my kind of like best shot at doing it with an IBK color. And I still have, you know, all of this kind of mess in there. But by splitting these two keys together, I get a much cleaner plate. It's kind of like much more natural, has all of the like original kind of ripples in it that the IBK color was never going to get me back. So I'm using that as my clean plate. And so we come into the We come into our result there. I don't actually care about the RGB components of this pipe. So there again, I shuffle red, green, shuffle alpha into red, green, and blue, and now I don't have to deal with it. What do we have going on here? So I noticed that I didn't like the way my hair was keying on this screen right side. So I made a separate keyer for it. You can notice that there's like more noise left in there than over the stock one. So I'm using this Roto, and I split those two together. So now we just kind of like, that's one area where I'm getting an alpha that I like now. Still good so far? Just want to pause for a second. A bunch of my crewmates from Crafty Apes dropped in here. And so, hello, and thanks for coming. So this key, like, it has the softness that we want. But like, we've got some major problems. If we gamma down, we've got big troubles here. And if I look at my output, we can actually see bright background poking through the foreground. This is a bummer. So am I going to go adjust my main key? You're like, oh, that's not quite right. No, I am not going to touch that thing, because what that thing is doing is it's getting all of this soft goodness and these soft edges that are in the plate. It's capturing that in the matte. And so instead of messing around with any of this, I'm going to go, and I'm actually going to have to recreate this with my buddy, the key light. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a grade. And on RGBA, I really only care about alpha, honestly. I'm going to make sure I'm clamped. And then I just do the like ugliness to make this a nasty key. See how all of the subtlety from our main key, you know, all of this kind of like range that's in the plate is now gone. I don't care though, because what I'm doing with this key is I'm going to make two parts. One of them is going to be eroded inside those soft edges of the foreground to be my inside matte. And another one is going to be eroded out the other way to trim off the outside noise that's still left from my main key. If I gain up, we can see all of this mess. Here's another place where different people have different ways of working. Some folks totally let all of this noise in and just make sure that their despilling is close to the background that they're putting in, and then that stuff is completely invisible. I was raised by really strict masters, and so I try not to play that game unless the deadline is looming. So what I'll do is I'll take that matte that this like hard matte that we made, and first I dilate in a little bit and then dilate back out, and that's just to close any, there's always some little hole somewhere. This one's actually see-through. Maybe I killed it with the grade, but I'll end up kind of dilating out, and then let's turn this one off for a second, and then I'll do an erode. And what I'm doing is I just want to get that matte edge away from the actual line that I want, and then I want to invert it. Should turn this one off temporarily too. I'll get back there. And so now I basically have a matte for all of that mess from my main key that I want to trim off. So if I turn off this stencil, we can look at our main key from before and I'm going to gain up tons of mess, right? I totally don't care about what's going on out here because I have a separate technique for taking care of that. But what I'd like to do is get rid of this close-in stuff that would require me to do really fiddly roto to get rid of. And so here's before, here's after. Is it completely gone? No, but earlier I mentioned how you can get away with a little bit of stuff. I'm going to see if I can get away with a little bit of stuff in this case. So that takes messy edges down to pretty clean edges. Unfortunately, it also takes our wispy hairs that we definitely want kept in the key, and it makes them go away. So that area requires a little bit of special treatment. So I'm going to go back here. Here's my dilated out key. I'm going to turn this one back on. I just dilated out a little bit more to give that soft wispy stuff some more room. The same thing with this filter erode. I come back on it just to push that even more. And so I'm going to select those, and then we're going to look down here. And so we can see this stuff that's getting clipped off. Because I made this special roto and handled it separately, we can keep it. And so it stays in our comp. See, they're getting cut off. Now they stay. Cool. But we can see that we haven't dealt with our inside mat yet. Everybody good for the outside mat?
Indeed.
Cool. So then the inside mat, it's basically the same key and crunched up. Sometimes some setups will require a completely separate key for the outside or the inside. Like you can kind of let the key looser for the outside mat and tighten it up, in the keyer itself for the inside mat. A lot of times I can get away with just using the same one for both purposes. But this one, let's come back into the body. So dilate it in a little bit, filter erode in a little bit. I should probably mention, I like the dilate and erode because they're pretty quick. Lots of folks have lots of special feather erode tools that are softer. There's no denying those tools make prettier mats. I've finalized plenty of things with these fast, ugly tools too. And so this is kind of utilitarian. So I'm happy to use the chisel and hammer that just kind of works. So here's our original mat. We just kind of stepped it in a little bit, softened it a little bit. And then this hair problem area, we definitely don't want to stamp any density into that. So I take my roto and I just completely remove it from the inside mat. That way it doesn't cause any problems. And when we add it, so here's our key. We can see we have all kinds of holes. Now we're filling them in. So heads up, here's how you know that I'm not done. This is still mess in the body. How do I deal with that? Do I adjust my dilates and erodes? If I do, I'm going to break something somewhere else. So generally, if I need to fix this, this is the kind of situation where you drop another roto, you make a mask for it, and then you use that and a key mix to split in a totally different approach. Something that's easy and works and doesn't take a lot of finagling. You just break the problem down far enough until it gets, each of the individual problems are solved. Then when you add them together, you're done. Okay, so at this point, I now have my main key, which is made up of 2 separate IBK setups. It's supported on the inside by the inside mat. It's supported on the outside to clean up around the edge by the outside mat. And so we kind of end up here. We still have mess though. And that's where my friend, the garbage mat, I used to make really soft, smooth roto shapes for my garbage mat. And what would end up happening is like, I would get the whole way through to the end of tech, and then somebody would catch my soft, weird garbage mat problem. I make them ugly now and jagged and hard so that if there's a problem, I can see it right away and fix it myself instead of trying to like cheat and push things down the pipe. So big ugly garbage mat, stencils that does all the trimming of all the mess on the outside. And then copy the alpha, pre-malt, super dark, background under. And that's mostly it. Like, are we done? No. But we can get to done from where we are because we've set up this thing that allows us to make the fixes where we need them. And we can build out as much complexity as we need to get the right bits in the right spot. So here's our original. Here's where we are. I don't really like the harshness in here. So that would be kind of my next place to look at. Also, this is a bit of a worst case scenario that you definitely can run into production. My background is almost 2. So like these are overbright backgrounds, which are gonna just highlight any lack of delicacy in your key. And so that like any situation where you have that kind of thing, you just need to go back in and just keep refining until you get nice and smooth. So here's kind of the setup. And I violated my own rule. I can't see the whole thing with the tooltips. I leave little tooltips because I forget which part is which. You know, I go home and I sleep and then I come back the next day and I don't remember what it is. And so I put them there for me. They're also handy if my shot gets flipped over to somebody else's desk so that they can open the shot and see, oh, right, okay, here's his despill section. Here's the key section. We've broken it out into a couple of different things. They know kind of what my intention was with each one of these sections. And so I do that like as self-defense for my own forgetfulness, but also for my coworkers. It's kind of like a hug when they have to pick up my shot and finish it for me, because that happens sometimes. So this is like the ground floor of keying. Like you start here and you go wherever the shot takes you. In terms of other techniques, there are other approaches. Most of them are fundamentally this technique with some other special sauce. So if it was me, like Tony Lyons hadn't made his great series on keying when I learned to composite. And I wish I had it because I had to learn all of these techniques like from different places. And some of them I had to learn by going back and rewatching his stuff. And so I totally recommend like starting there. He breaks it down. I mean, it's like a couple of hours of material, but it's all broken down into like digestible sections, and he lays out really well the techniques and explains kind of the magic of each one of them. That that series, which is on YouTube, also kind of kicked off a really great conversation on the VFXTalk server. So go look up evening out a green screen before keying, and read. It's like kicked off a super long conversation with a bunch of kind of heavyweights in the compositing world, like contributing their ideas, and like the whole thing about keying is it's always, here's my technique, and then somebody else's goes, yes, but thank you, Beta, for putting the links in the chat. Appreciate that. There's always like a yes, but, and according to like some circumstances, and so it's cool to hear these folks kind of discuss that. I know I super valued it when it was happening. So here's the Tony Lyons thing. And so if you see something that looks like this on YouTube, that's the thing, go for it. Oh, and don't be like, you can see it says like 9 years ago, 10 years ago. All these techniques are still completely valid. There is no like, oh yeah, that's the old way, and we don't do it that way anymore. Like anything that finals will get you there. So then here's kind of what the evening out a green screen looks like. If you see that, you're in the right place. And then just, I appreciate that y'all showed up. And I'm curious if you have any questions about all of the stuff that I left out of the presentation. And I just see the like 15-minute warning. So we have 15 minutes to talk. Anybody? Nothing? I explained keying perfectly. Impossible. My pleasure.
I'm very suspicious to talk about you, Tim, so I'm quiet. Very quiet.
Tim, thank you. This is the same way that I really appreciate you doing this, because you openly mentioned like everyone thinks in a different way. Like everybody builds their special key hole to like fit the lock that is each plate, because each keying is sort of the organic process still. You're dealing with ways that the lens is messing up your pixels, and then you have to, find out why the color channels are spreading, and it in a lot of ways, like CG is so much easier because the computer can just make it perfect, and you can just reshoot it. You don't get that with keying. But I really appreciate you showing the core mat and the edge mat process. I remember learning this and being really weirded out until I really realized that like all detail is noise.
Yeah.
And all you're doing is changing the noise to filter ratio until you get everything you want to keep, and then you lose everything you don't want to have anymore. And I saw you say I didn't have Tony Lyons either when I started, and I had a VFX book that showed the key from a Star Wars shot from ILM when they put out the prequels, and I was like, that looks like shit. Like, it's so dirty. There's so much noise in there. But being an idiot, well, not being an idiot, just being a student, not realizing that like that's not the final key. Like, and all that noise around them is all detail.
Totally. I spent a long time fixing my like keys that I had cleaned up too much. And it would totally suck, because you're like, oh, what's going on? And then I met somebody that's just like, yeah, just leave them loose. I was like, what? You can do that? And like, you can, until you can't, right? And so all of this, it's like it's totally context related, totally depends on what camera, lens, film combination you may be working with, depends on the color pipeline of the footage before you get it, and in some aspects after you get it. You know, like after the whatever's happening in DI can like wake up things that you'll then have to fix because they'll come back as notes. And so it's like, it's, you know, for the people who can just like sit down and calmly churn out really clean, solid keys really quickly, I swear they're aliens. Because I have to sweat on them.
This is great. This is awesome. And thank you too for going through different ways and processes to get mats, because when you break the system down into your spill plate, your despill process, and your core and edge mat, it doesn't matter how you get your mats. And it sort of doesn't matter how you get your despill, because you can key mix in sections. Like some despill will only get 80% of the image or 2% of the image. And then you have to key mix in different sections, and you have to try new things. You have to use the keyer and the chroma keyer, and sometimes you can get Ultimate to work. You know, or if IBK is giving you like weird errors that you can't understand because it's kind of a black box at a certain point. You know,
it totally
try
is.
other stuff.
That brings up an interesting point. Like when I get my first key assigned from a show, which has a camera and a process that I just don't know. I mean, I have keyers that I like, but the keyers that I like don't always give the best result on that specific footage. So the first thing I'll do is just literally drop down a one-click key on every single keyer in the arsenal. And I am also a super fan of just the dumb old keyer node, which totally has a green screen and blue screen mode. Also, by the way, has a red screen mode, which is sometimes useful for grabbing skin tones. Like I have used every single one of those modes to get the alpha that I needed on some show. I'm a huge fan of the simple tools. So just like drop them all down, like take this whole menu, where is it? And just like drop every single one, see which one is clean on this show, and then go with it.
Awesome advice. Also to note that the normal keyer node can key values over 1. So it's great for keying fire or a sky with a sun in it.
There's these nifty little plus and minus controls that I didn't even know about until like a year ago, I think. I was talking about having to like manually take the values over 1 and then close the control panel and then reopen it, and it'd pop up to the new range. And somebody was like, dude, just click the little plus and minus button. I was like, oh, of course. That's why I like stuff like this, because there's always some trick that you've never seen before. And you're like, whoa, that was simple and awesome. Kaviraj, did you have a question?
Yeah. Hi, Tim. Yeah, even it's very new for me. Like I'm just mind blown by this feature. Like, what is I mean, A, B, C, D, and I've been always curious in the Luma tier. In the Luma tier, A, B, C, D in the bottom. What does it mean, and what does it mean?
What am I? Oh, in the keyer?
Yeah.
So each one of these places has a name. This is the A point, this is the B point, here's the C point, and here's the D point. So if you think of luminance along the horizontal here, or brightness, depending on your mode, it'll be like, if you have the red keyer, it'll only be in the red channel. If you have luminance on, it'll just be the brightness and won't deal with color. So A is always at 0. B is always at 1 in the alpha, C is also at 1, and D is at 0 again. So if I make a ramp, and drop down a brand new keyer, and if I look at the alpha, yep, okay. So I can compare between the ramp and the alpha because I'm in luminance, it's exactly the same. But if I look at the output of the keyer, when I pull C down, why is this not working? Ah, because I'm not looking at the alpha channel. Okay, put this back the way it was. Here's our original. A's at 0, C's at 1. So when I pull the C point down, it brings that in. And if I pull the B point across, that squeezes that down. When I bring the C point, it comes out. And now you see we have like basically a 0 to 1 and then a 1 to 0 again. So this keyer is like weirdly genius because I can do an invert with it just by pulling B and C across. And so now I have white down here and black up here. And so instead of using the invert button, you can kind of just do it here. Or if you have something where you just like, I really only need to grab those mid-range values, you can also kind of grab them that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. So what are those plus and minus signs if you press?
So, and then if I click minus, I can kind of increase the range. So, you know, a lot of footage, you'll have highlight values that go up to 10, 50. And if you need to key on them, you know, this thing will go up kind of as far as you need it to. Like we're up to 1024. You know, so you can make the range go kind of as wide or as small as you need to.
If you have the chance to get the shake manual, what that node is actually doing is doing a compress and an expand. Exactly what you're doing right now. You're compressing one side and expanding the other side.
Okay.
And if you need the manual, hit me up. I have it. I can send to you. The software doesn't exist anymore. Just saying.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Thank you, Tim and Manuel.
Any other questions? All right. Well, then I'm going to stop yapping at you. Hope everybody has a lovely afternoon or rest of whatever day part you're in. And I'll see you on the server.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah.
If we have this time, if we have another 2 minutes, open invitation to anybody on the server to propose another topic for a video. You know, Tim, I don't know if anyone asked you to do this, but there's things people want to have covered or they have questions about, or you just want to, you see someone failing at, you want to watch someone else fail at it. Like, just hit it.
Is that already volunteer? Also, Austin. Yeah.
There's a thread in one of the. I'll have to dig the thread up and put it in the Hangout because there's a thread where we're kind of soliciting suggestions. I have a big list compiled already. The next one is Howard Cabalfin, which we haven't scheduled yet. I'm hoping for next month, and I totally can't remember the topic. But it sounded really great at the time, and so I was just like, all right, you're doing the next one. But if there's something you want to see, definitely let us know somehow on the server. Hit me up via email. You know, however it takes. Here's the contact again. Or just shout it out here. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for being here.
Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you very much.